3 quotes. Isn't that the law?
Yeah.
No, they have to seek 3 quotes.
They have to seek 3 quotes. Right, they don't, right.
Trust me, it's been a bear trying to get quotes for
Quotes
certain
from
things.
any, right.
Right, and so, you know, but, all right, are we in consensus that this is the best we're going to do right now?
I think.
I think probably because, but I'm concerned about the bridge design one without, that it's just a number. And when you're in the warrant article, it's no longer a placeholder. It's a number for bridge design, the end. And
They have been working with somebody because he's talking about, you know, whether or not you're better off waiting for state funding so many years down the pike and having to patch it between now and then, or starting it on the design. Yeah.
They were going to get 2 designs for each bridge.
It may well be a
wait for
placeholder.
the state or something.
And the one that would come, the more expensive, longer lasting one that would come when we had the state funds.
But they didn't, but I still think that wasn't a realistic figure. He just had to put that in there. I don't know.
Right. That's my feeling, is just,
Do we want to ask?
I mean, Joel's done a huge amount of work in design, so he really knows, he does, in fact, know those kinds of figures. He knows what Walpole paid for designs for the bridge that got wiped out there by Cold River Road. So if that's a Joel figure, it's probably closer, it's probably more than just being thrown out. I should give him credit for that.
All right, so then we're reached where we're going to reach.
Yeah, and we can vote.
Okay, we need a warrant. We need a motion before we can vote.
A question on this,
Go ahead.
if I may. When we're trying to cut things, let's get rid of the trailer.
Trailer's coming out of capital reserve, there's nothing to cut.
On our,
The money's already there.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking if we can even keep it for capital reserve, then we could.
They need the trailer.
They do need the trailer. I mean, they have one that's being loaned to them. That can be taken away at any time, and then we have to buy a trailer.
So we're going to be buying this one that's being loaned to us, or we're going to get a brand new one?
It's not a brand new one. There's one that they can get for $15,000 that is used.
Oh, and here's another variable too that's going to affect the capital reserve. They figured they'll be able to sell the old 2 old fire trucks. One of them, somebody's been drooling over wanting to buy anyway. So you know, that's more income. Maybe another 10 grand if we're lucky. That'll come in for those 2 things too. So hard to say. If people keep buying cars, that'll obviously affect it. So all right, we need a motion then to change the paving number to 210 and the fire truck from fund balance down from 80 to 70. And let the record reflect that. Somebody want to make that motion?
I make a motion that we, I can say so moved, and that these figures are given to the selectmen.
a second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Okay.
Are we going to discuss how and when we're going to present
Yes,
this?
okay. So and it's 8 o'clock now, if not a little after. So the last thing, well, one other thing I'll skip to quick before we get into how we're going to communicate with the select board. Is there anything from any of the subcommittees that need to be reported at this point? Okay. Just a quick update on the fire truck at this, is that we've gone over the bids as a whole committee, and the fire guys have copies of the bids, and we'll be looking for compliance with our spec from strictly a truck standpoint. A couple of us have looked at the spec and the bids for compliance to the business end of it, in terms of did they supply all the paperwork and you know, liability insurance bonds and all that kind of fun stuff. So, and then we'll reconvene next week. The select board, or Joel, did tell me that we do not need to make a definitive decision by the warrant articles in terms of think we should go forward with or recommend. Obviously, the bids are good through the beginning of April, so obviously we have to do something by then. So, any questions on that? All right, the whole issue in terms of communication with the select board and the warrant articles and that whole situation. What are people's feelings?
I think if we're going to communicate with the selectmen, I think there should be, from us, 3 letters sent out to the 3 selectmen. Registered return receipt, number 1. For our records, we have that. And it's on papers. You know, it's not going to be something that they can say, well, we didn't get that or we didn't hear that correctly. This way, by having everything on black and white and then getting to sign for the letters or for our information, that everyone's covered. And we're covered as far as making sure the numbers are getting to them. We're making sure that the selectmen don't hit back with, well, we never got that type of stuff. And
That hasn't been an issue. It's they get it, but they don't necessarily respond.
Maybe with this it will.
Yeah, I think that's a little hard, I don't want to say hardball because that's not what it is. But I think just getting it in front of them, Carol and Glenn have been getting this stuff in front of them. They've been going to those meetings, so has Marge, I believe.
Well, you've been going to the Tuesday night meetings.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then Glenn and I have been at more of the other budget planning sessions.
Right, but I think there's the concern, but and I'm not sure we have a way around it, is the attitude of the selectmen, whether they're even going to look at it, look at anything coming from this board.
They don't have to.
They don't have to,
And as Joel would say, it's a different select board that had this committee formed.
but it was the voters who asked for this committee to be formed.
Did they?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
done at the selectmen's meeting.
And they've had other.
Well, yes, except for the suggestion came from at the deliberative session.
No, it was Chris.
I thought it was the selectmen who suggested that we.
Chris Reedman
Yeah.
suggested it to the select.
Before he was a selectman.
Right?
It
Before the
had been
committee
presented
was
before the deliberative session to the select board.
Well, we formed a year ago August, so it was well before the whole budget process
Oh,
of
yeah.
2015. But, I was just in the process of been here a little while. But, had no idea what caused the committee to be formed. But, I think one of my underlying concerns going forward is if they're not going to listen to us, do you stay as a group like this, or what do we do? Because obviously we could potentially be spinning our wheels. I think we have to look short term right now, and then we've got a little time to worry more about the long term as far as that goes. And so,
And we also don't know what it's going to be in the future. However, yeah, we do need to think about that. But I think that's the question right now is how are we going to put this before our current board of selectmen?
what I've been doing is when I put something together, and you guys, and I've gotten feedback from you, and I think it's correct. I've shared it with Joel and the other selectmen, so they've gotten emails of all of this stuff all along. So it's been out there.
So they did receive a copy of this information about our warrant article
Absolutely.
recommendations.
Yep. And, as we were reminded last night, we are advisory, and so where do we go from there? I don't know.
I mean, I liked Glenn's suggestion that we go to the meeting and ask to be put on the agenda.
I think that's important, but I can't really say that because my Tuesday nights are not available. So it's easy for me to say that, but not for me to show up on a Tuesday night.
Marge, Glenn, and I have been routinely going to the meetings, and so we're there to hear. My question is, what specifically do we want to be on the agenda for?
We want to review our recommendations for the warrant article. We want to explain
Right.
in excruciating detail how we came up with these numbers.
Yeah. No, I think that's what we want.
we want to explain our concern about dropping the fund balance down too low, because I'm sure that at least one of the selectmen has the same background in the fund balance that we did when we started, which is nothing.
Right, and you can't, it's hard enough to
So-
understand when you think
Right.
you know something about it.
Right. And I think as many of those should go as can go.
I think numbers are important, because right now my Tuesdays are double booked. That would be a triple booking on my Tuesday nights. So I apologize for that, but it's,
It is what it is, you're fine. Don't worry about it. Again, so basically what you're saying is we want to be on the agenda for, thank you, the agenda for discussing our warrant articles.
Our recommendations.
Recommendations.
Our recommendations.
For the warrant articles. And I'm not sure we got an answer. I'm not sure we got a answer on whether or not our recommendations could be on when they make their
The warrant,
when they come up with the
Publish
final
it,
warrant.
yes.
when does that usually come out? Do they send that out before the vote?
It has to be before the deliberative session.
No,
No.
Before excuse me, it changes for that.
before the town meeting.
The final one the deliberative session can change, you can change numbers, not words, so it has to come out before then.
No. The recommendations don't. The recommendations have to come out for March. If they're going to make recommendations, they're not obligated to make recommendations, but if they do, they come out in the town report, which comes out about a week before the meeting, right?
Oh, yeah, for that, yes, but I'm talking about
Well,
this.
it's kind of interesting, because I was trying to do a little homework today to find something definitive, which was difficult to find, but NewHampshireMunicipal.org, it does say that new amendments to RSA 32:5 and RSA 40:13 allow any town to require, by a vote of the town meeting, that the numeric tally of all votes of an advisory or official budget committee and all votes of the governing body be printed in the warrant next to the article.
Whoa.
The numeric tally is the total result of the vote on the item, such as budget committee recommends this article by a vote of 9-2. Selectmen do not recommend this article by a vote of 3-2. However, there's no authorization to include a roll call vote indicating the specific vote of each member. A vote to include the numeric tally under this new law also authorizes the town to include these recommendations in separate warrant articles, not just special warrant articles and those relating to cost items.
So when does this change? What's the date of this?
Doesn't say. I think after 2007. But again, it's by a vote of the town meeting, so technically they can say no this year, and there has to be a town meeting to change that, so.
We have to make the warrant.
So we would have to do a warrant. Yeah.
Does that say anything about whether it's an advisory?
Yeah, it does.
Yes, it did. It said either or, advisory or official.
Interesting.
So, if I'm hearing this right, we could go with a vote from the town to make us from an advisory to an official part?
No,
No? Okay.
you can't.
Now this
That's new.
was,
Go ahead.
what she was just reading now was in the town report when warrant article 3 on bridge, whatever. Selectmen are in favor of this, 3-0. AAPC is in favor of this.
9-2.
Right,
Like we
exactly.
did last year, basically. However, there's another thing. It says, without such a vote by a town meeting, recommendations should continue to appear without the numeric tally and only with special articles and cost items of collective bargaining agreements. Now, I don't know what they mean by special articles. What a special warrant article is.
So you're looking into whether we have any grounds for requiring them to put our recommendations in the warrant list,
Exactly.
on the ballot,
So
actually.
it is, I mean, I think the fact that they say that it should be happening regardless.
When I talked to Joel previously, because I asked this last week, he gave me the impression that they will want our input for mailing with the warrant articles of opinions, but he was not, he did, but he was not sure about Chris and Rob.
Right, and when he said that, I was watching body language of the others, and the body language did not say, yes, this is a great idea. It didn't say no, but it wasn't like, it wasn't in agreement. So, we don't know where they stand.
All right, I think,
Well, I think we know where Rock stands.
yes, I think we need to ask
It's just
them
a matter of where Chris stands.
to discuss our recommendations for the warrant articles and whether or not they're going to include our recommendations on the actual warrant itself. Is there anything else that we should request for the agenda for the select board? And I don't know that it would be this meeting or another meeting.
No, that's the biggie.
Okay.
Without question, that's the
The
biggie.
other, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we're talking about coming down in numbers, I think what we should do is give us a date, maybe tonight, of what select board meeting we wanna come to, so we're all on the same page that way.
I mean, for clearing our schedules.
Yeah,
That's a
for
good
I
idea.
don't think we're going to have a choice on that. I think it'll depend on wherever they put us on the agenda. And I would suspect it's either going to be this Tuesday or next Tuesday, hopefully sooner rather than later, because part of me says it should be this Tuesday to get it out in the open. The other part of me says they may want to have a discussion first and then include us the week after. But you've only got 3 Tuesdays between now and the deliberative, so yeah. But the other thing too is keep in mind what our alternatives are if we feel strongly about getting the message out to the taxpayers. If 2 issues occur, one, we don't come to consensus with the select board, because good or bad, that's sending a message if we're not in consensus with the select board in terms of the final budget and what comes out. And the other thing is, are there a couple of warrant articles we want people to be particularly aware of and maybe talk to at the deliberative session that perhaps we want to meet with people beforehand or have them come to our meetings so it's all public and everything in terms of like these are our concerns, that kind of thing. What we think the key warrant articles are, and then how are we going to communicate with the taxpayers if we're not able to do it through the town mail it. I mean, I think there's a number of alternatives. I'm sure if push came to shove, we could come up with $50 or $100 if we had to run down to Staples and make a bunch of copies and get them out to places. Or there's always Facebook.
Well,
It's a town webpage.
the selectmen will include, they'll look at it first, but if you want to send something out in the town report, they will, they said at one time that they would include that. If you want a sheet in there with your opinions on it. From
Well, they
the
did last year.
board. Yeah, I think that's,
They sent out a sheet
That was
ahead
good.
of time, did they not?
they sent one ahead of time.
That gave it all.
Also.
Because I think they were running really late on the town report.
Yeah, the town report was,
They have statutory, I think, have to get that information out at least a week before the vote. But, yeah, they did last year, but as I said before, as Joel likes to say, it was a different select board. So,
well, I thought that was sort of a standard thing that they would include.
you'd hope, but that's a concern, because we've been hearing too often that we're just an advisory
Yeah.
board.
But that would just be advisory too.
Yeah, I mean, I think without cost, we can certainly put it on our part of the webpage. We can put out our thoughts on it. We can put it on Facebook. Those we can do without cost. I think until we get an answer from them, I don't think it's...
That's why I said to keep it in the back where everybody's gone. It's
Yeah.
something that we need to be thinking about, but hopefully it will be
Well,
a moot point.
and the other thing is, I think what could be very difficult this year, and again, until we get the real ones, we don't know, and that is, even though we want monies put aside for something, we may not have given anywhere near what the select board does, so if things do not get changed at the deliberative session, how we vote on some of these could be very difficult.
Okay.
I just think that for instance, 145,000 for Article 4, and we have down 40,000. It isn't that we don't want it, we just think we have a wildly different number there, and so then without an explanation, and if we vote against it and say we do not recommend this, it isn't that we don't recommend it, it's that we don't recommend that amount of money. I mean, anyway, that kind of thing is going to be a difficult.
Yes, we need to be prepared, and that's a good point, and I should make a note of that for the agenda for 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, yeah, the 3rd, for 2-3 will be basically our strategizing for the deliberative session.
Right, because we need to know, right, who's going to make motions for each of these different things that are changes.
All right. Any other old business? Okay. New business, comments, etc. We need a blurb for the annual report. Does anybody feel like writing that? I will draft it.
We need to look at last year's.
I'll draft it. Chris Hansen, I don't know who wrote that year. Okay. Chris said he'd look it over, so thank you. I appreciate that. I got to write the one for the next year.
Yeah, I'll look at the one last year.
Okay. Jonathan, do we keep him on email since he has resigned, or do we take him off since he's resigned, or do we leave him on because he's involved with the reporting process?
I would leave them on until,
Fine.
Unless he said,
That's fine with me. The other thing is that some people have terms that are coming up here, and you should be aware of what your terms are and thinking about whether or not you want to continue on this board. That's another issue. That's a whole other issue in terms of if selectmen do not wish to publish what we said, where we feel this board needs to go.
so that's a whole other discussion,
That's
only
a can of worms.
when we get that answer.
Yeah, let's wait on that until
Yes. But just,
After the election.
after the town meeting.
yeah. And
We see what the new board
potentially,
is.
well, yeah, potentially the elections, yes, so. Okay. Any comments from our visitors?
Carol, I just had somebody talk to me today about, and this might be on your punch list, and I know we've talked about this before, they wanted to know about, they were interested in actually buying tax sales. Have the selectmen done anything about, back taxes, homes that are coming up on that?
You have to ask them, as far as I know, they try to avoid foreclosing on houses, because then you've got to maintain them and try to sell them and all that stuff and insurance, and so they really go out of their way, from what I've been told, to not do that.
Yeah, they really try hard not to.
Okay, let's see here. In terms of action items, you're going to write the blurb for the annual report. I will update the warrant article numbers and run them by you guys and then the select board, and request that we have a meeting with the select board, of which we had two things we wanted to discuss. The agenda was to discuss our recommendations for the warrant article, and then whether or not our recommendations were going to appear on the warrant itself or go out with their mailing. And let's see if there was anything else. Were there any other action items?
I'm following up with Kelly.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Any other action items? All right, one thing I forgot to mention, our punch list. Apparently the mileage policy has been written, although nobody's seen it and knows what the numbers are. That punch list may need to get updated because they want to split out mileage, which I think they just arbitrarily did in this year's thing. They took $50 and everybody's from someplace else and just threw it in under mileage. I think that's something that needs to be more realistic next year. So since you're the keeper of the punch list, if you want to do that, that'd probably be good.
Well, that's good that they made up a mileage something, because then that's split in fuel tax.
When we go to the select board, do we want to talk about friendly meals and other nonprofits?
No.
Does that need to be on the punch list or our agenda at some point?
Yes. And first of all, it's such a small part of the budget that I think the time needs to be spent on the other things. But I do think
I think it's
the nonprofit thing is important.
Yeah,
too.
I think that's a question we could certainly ask at some point if friendly meals does come up, rather than bringing it up is, what about anybody else who's a nonprofit? Is that a town building? Which we don't seem to know.
There was one other thing about the nonprofit thing. If I remember correctly, that budget only lists stuff like electricity and stuff like that, right? It doesn't list the fact that the people at the Friendly Meals were putting their adult diapers in the toilet and messing up the septic system.
That's huge.
And it doesn't include stuff like David's crew schlepping food back and forth and stocking it up. I mean, what's broken out as expenses for Friendly Meals does not include everything.
That's a good point. Is that a point you're willing to bring up at some point?
When we discuss Friendly Meals,
At the deliberative session?
or wherever we're going to discuss it.
Okay. I will keep you posted as to what Tuesday night they want to meet with us, if they do want to meet with us. Hopefully they will. And does anybody know what happens if there's a major blizzard the day of the deliberative session? Does it go on anyway, or is there a snow day?
It's a snow day, isn't it?
I think it depends how close they pushed it.
Because there's only like two weekends
You
that
get
they're
your
allowed or
cross-country
something.
skiing out.
It has to be X number of days before this, and X number of days, right, but then they have to allow time to have the town reports printed, made up, printed, and distributed before, so there isn't, they don't leave a bunch. They don't leave a lot of time there, and
The state only gives you like 2 weekends or something.
right, but again, it's, if the whole process would actually get pushed back earlier, the way, our little chart had hoped that it would be, then there isn't as much pressure here. Then we can take the earlier of the 2 weekends and you have a second chance.
I thought you were very tactful about the fact that had been totally ignored, so jokes on that.
I was looking for a word that wasn't ignored. I couldn't come up with it.
Just not utilized.
Like
Pardon?
that.
Yeah. And, Glenn makes a point about that because they waited for Gloria's budget. And he thinks that's why they didn't finish their line item review. I can see where he's coming from, but I won't use the word of what I referred to that as last night. I disagree with him because I think they could have easily had go-overs with everybody else, second rounds with department heads on stuff, but it wasn't an issue, so.
Hey.
Kelly's not here, she
No. So as far as, I think things just dragged on way too long, and I think that's a concern for next year. And part of me says it was our fault, and the other part of me says no. Joel and I sat there, and I'm sure you heard us, and you heard us, and Barb too. How many times at select board meetings did we say, what's the schedule? When are we going to be meeting with department heads? We can go back and didn't get an answer. So.
You brought up a point too, Carol, about some department heads said that there were amounts that were taken out and they felt they should have been, in on it, but I think everything got pushed to shove in the end and there wasn't a lot of time.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep, and that's not good. Because then you're just flying by the seat of your pants.
Well, I think it was happened more than once that department heads were told their budgets were coming up that night, and then they weren't. And
One night they did the heroin thing.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a lot longer than anyone expected.
They did many short meetings.
Yeah, and then they just.
Yeah, there were a lot of non-publics.
Well, they could have done their own publics, but they could have pushed them out a little bit. It seemed like meetings were half hour short, and it's like, why bother?
Can I move that we adjourn?
You
Second,
certainly
like,
may.
second.
I will keep you all posted. Thank you,
So
folks.
what was your second action item? You're going to ask for us to put on the agenda, and what was the other one?
I'll take the warrant articles and the parcel.
Yeah.
Starting to look pretty good. He likes the warm fire. I think getting,
Just throw it all on.
getting from point A to point B is pretty traumatic.
When we come down, we're going to fly. I figure people we visit have a car, I don't need one.
Well, that's what we did when we were in Florida. We freeloaded off of our friends, and it was a great experience.
I did it last year before we